On today's show, we're going to be tackling one very important question. I'm going to tell you what that question is here coming up in a moment. This is the Steve Deace Show. You'll notice I'm not Steve Deace. I don't know how you would get me confused with Steve Deace. I'm Aaron McIntyre. I'm his producer. Along for the ride is Todd Erzin, as always. You can follow the show on all of the social media platforms that you're probably already on. You can find him there at TikTok, Instagram, of course, over on X at Steve Deace Show. Find him on, I think he's still posting on MeWe. You can find him on Truth Social, although I don't think he posts there much. All of the social media platforms you're already on, you can find Steve Deace. Most importantly, though, we want to know what you think about what we think. Steve at stevedeace.com is where you can email the show. So I teased this at the very beginning. We're going to be tackling a very important question on today's show. Todd, you have no idea what I'm about to say to you.
None.
Here's the question that I want us to tackle today. Is Skype the devil? Todd, your thoughts?
Oh, there seems to be a lot. I mean, hornets, wasps, Skype, any number of devils persecuting the Steve Deace Show. So I don't know. You're the guy who's running the enterprise over there. I just, hey, there, look at that.
Yeah, for now, for the next 30 seconds or so.
Minutes.
Steve, you probably didn't catch the question that I asked. I opened the show by asking a very important question that we're going to be tackling, and we will be tackling it on today's show. I guarantee you that. Is Skype the devil? Your thoughts?
Based on what we have seen here in the last 30 minutes, I think it's entirely possible that the answer to that question is yes. All right. So the enemy is like, he's left the studio where we're still being invaded by hornets. They told us they set traps on Friday and you guys were still killing wasps yesterday. Okay. And so I think now they've decided to attack us via Skype. But here we are, undeterred, unbowed, but a little delayed as we welcome you to a Wednesday edition of the Steve Deace Show, where we're off to a rousing start with today's technology. Coming up on today's show, we're going to play Buy, Sell, or Hold, starting at the bottom of the hour. All this, by the way, is to be determined. To be determined by Skype and not us, apparently. But we are going to play Buy, Sell, or Hold here at the bottom of the hour. Daniel Horowitz is going to join us next hour of the show. And I think we need to answer a very sobering question here, that if they've tried to kill Trump twice, and I mean, I don't just say things for effect around here. I believe they're just going to keep trying to kill him. Why wouldn't they? They've just tried to keep doing everything else. So as macabre and ghastly as it is to discuss, but we're in an era, guys, where Scott Rasmussen, not to be confused with his former polling firm, he has his own outfit now. He came out with a poll today.
That's in the montage.
All right. I won't spoil it. Okay, then. But because we'll talk about it coming out. But yeah, they're just going to keep shooting until they get him. At least that's what I think. So I think we should at least ponder the question that what happens if they do politically? What were to occur then? We'll discuss that coming up in the final segment of the show with our good friend Daniel Horowitz. We are brought to you today by our good friends over at Preborn, and they are on the front lines of doing Save the Babies and the Mommies pro-life ministry. They are incredibly effective because they just borrow the models from the Bible of how to persuade, both with truth, that's a confrontation. Hey, just an evangelistic metric. You need to repent of your sins. You're a sinner. You need to repent. You're bound for hell. You deserve it. You want it. You have to repent from that. You have to turn away from that. And they do that to moms. They show them the ultrasound of their baby and say, hey, that's not a glob of tissue there. That's a human being with a heartbeat. And you don't have two heartbeats, so that belongs to somebody else. That's not your body. That's somebody else. And then when mom chooses life, as she does the majority of the time, Preborn then comes in then and offers up the grace. And that can be, even if it's just emotional assistance and counseling, it can be financial in terms of providing car seats, formula, diapers, prenatal, postnatal care. All of these things they offer to these moms, by the way, free of charge, even though this stuff is not free. That's where we come in. If you want to make a tax-deductible donation today, did you know for as little as $28 you could fund an ultrasound that would save a baby's life? All right, that's preborn.com/Steve. Make that donation today to preborn.com/Steve. And I mentioned we're going to do buy, sell, or hold. We'll get through as many of those as we can. What remains, we'll get to in the overtime today. And you don't ever want to miss our overtime or any of our other exclusive content right here on Blaze TV. That biggest ever discount we offered last week for the presidential debate, $40 off now. That's the biggest one we've offered, 40% off. We're going to continue that, in fact. So if you want to make that choice today and subscribe to Blaze TV to make sure you get our stuff directly from us, because you never know when the censorship industrial complex will kick in. All right, go to blazetv.com/Deace is where you can go. blazetv.com/Deace. Use the code DACE40. Use the code DACE40. DACE40 is the code to get $40, 40% off your Blaze TV subscription at blazetv.com/Deace. And with that, let's get it going with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by a flashback to last Tuesday. You'll remember this was the most viral moment from the debate between Kamala and Donald Trump regarding the city of Springfield, Ohio.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
It was quickly followed up by one of numerous one-sided fact checks from ABC moderator David Muir.
And ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, not so fast. At a Springfield City Commission meeting just recently in March, one citizen showed up and told the Springfield city manager to his face,
laws and culture is 180 degrees different of what they're used to. And one of the things that I heard that bothered me very much, I've actually had quite a few people contact me here lately, is some pretty horrid things occurring to domesticated animals in the neighborhood. We've had some stuff in the park that, again, they're being taken advantage of for reasons other than, and if you shake your head, Brian.
No. I asked me if there was proof. I just don't have proof of it.
I have the same thing. People that have confided in me have asked me for anonymity. I can't give their names up.
I mean, we haven't seen the proof that you're talking. And I've heard about it.
Yeah, the voice you hear responding to that citizen and seemingly confirming the talk of butchering domesticated animals on the part of Haitian immigrants. That voice is Springfield City Manager Brian Heck. So another hoax. We now have the city's own manager seemingly lying to ABC News regarding the all but illegal immigrant crisis in his own town. Moving on, police reportedly found explosives in a car near former President Donald Trump's rally site on Long Island ahead of his speech tonight. Sources in the Nassau County Police Department allegedly told One American News Network journalist James Lalino that the rally site perimeter was breached and a blue barrel was removed. Nassau County Police Commissioner said later this morning reports of explosives being found near the perimeter of the Trump rally are quote-unquote unfounded. Orwell update. Here's CBS News and Nora O'Donnell.
Donald Trump is blaming Democrats for inflaming political rhetoric, but the former president's own words seem to be increasing the threat of political violence in Springfield, Ohio.
Is Mike Johnson growing a spine? House Speaker Johnson announced yesterday he's moving forward with a chamber-wide vote to stop a government shutdown with a bill attached meant to crack down on illegal voting, among other measures. Kamala Harris spoke to the National Association of Black Journalists conference and was once again asked a very specific question about inflation.
Is the price of groceries still too high? Yes. Do we have more work to do? Yes. And I will tell you, I do believe that I offer a new generation of leadership for our country that is about, in particular, turning the page on an era that sadly has shown us attempts by some to incite fear, to create division in our country.
Pop culture news, the new Disney Plus Marvel show Agatha All Along is coming out today. Variety magazine showed up to the premiere and asked one of the actresses, Sashir Zamata, a weird question.
That Agatha is the gayest project Marvel has ever done. Agree?
I would agree with that, yeah.
Why is it?
You'll see. You'll see when you watch it. But, I think witches are queer inherently just because we are outcast and, set aside for many reasons. And I think this show shows a really good representation of different types of people and that we can all use the power we have within to, go forth and be great.
Trainee terror update in my small town where I live of Norwalk, Iowa. A 19-year-old woman pretending to be a man told her therapist she wanted to shoot up one of our local elementary schools. Her therapist then told police, and now Margaret Anderson, who sometimes goes by Maxwell Anderson, is being charged with making terroristic threats. And finally, according to a new survey from Scott Rasmussen and the Napolitan Institute, 28% of Democrats say America would have been better off if Donald Trump had been assassinated. Another 24% of Democrats aren't sure. Fewer than half, 48% of Democrats could bring themselves to say that America would not be better off if the opposing party's candidate had been assassinated. 51% of Democrats oppose increasing former President Trump's security detail. Good luck sharing a country with that. And that's what happened while we were away.
Also included in that poll, by the way, guys, 49% of Democrats believe that Trump is staging these assassination attempts. So we're going to get into that here in a moment. Aaron's Montage brought to you by our friends over at Relief Factor. If you want to get back to the days when you were more agile, mobile, and less docile, but you're thinking, those days are past, Steve. I'm old now. And that could be the case. You might be old. I don't know all of you. Some of you, I would assume, are. And as we get older, it's not like their body gets better, okay? But it also could be very possible you're giving up the ghost here. You're quitting too easily, all right? And it could just be that you need to battle the inflammation in your joints that is causing that chronic pain that leads to all that achiness, stiffness, and yuckiness and soreness that you've been dealing with. And that's where Relief Factor comes in. No guarantees here. But this drug-free supplement created by physicians who can prescribe drugs. Over the years, it's been tried by over 1 million people who have tried the 3-week quick start, and over 70% of them saw such great results in 3 weeks or less. They stuck around with the product long term. So for $20, that's all it costs, the 3-week quick start. Why don't you see if you don't see a difference in your pain in 3 weeks or less when you go to ReliefFactor.com. Again, head over to ReliefFactor.com. That's where you want to go. That's ReliefFactor.com. I want to start quickly. I want to mention this with Mike Johnson, the House Speaker. And I have been exceedingly critical. Well, I went from skeptical when he came on board as Speaker to just pretty critical in a nanosecond. I was skeptical because, I mean, here's a guy that I'm told is a biblical worldview guy and has done all this stuff for my belief system. And yet I've been involved in lots of fights all over the country. From a biblical worldview standpoint, I never heard his name one time, had no idea who he was, did not even know he was in the Congress, never heard of him. No clue. Remember last year when he was made Speaker, we asked our buddy Bob Vanderplatz, who's he's certainly more well-connected than even I am. He's like, never heard the name Mike Johnson in my life, no clue who he is. Now he's the Speaker of the House, okay? So not always, but pretty often, the guy you've never heard of, the gal you've never heard of, doesn't just, every now and then it's a shepherd boy from the house of Jesse, okay, in the Valley of Elah. Every now and then that happens, all right? But those are forces beyond this mortal coil, okay? Most of the time when it's someone you've never heard of shows up for a fight they've never before been in, it's because they're just not going to fight it, not any good at it. So, hey, I know there is a cadre of you that are going to say, well, he's going to quit later. I'm not for CRs. This is 100% improvement from Mike Johnson. What he's doing now is is it the best scenario? No. Is it the perfect scenario? No. Is it maybe the best we can do with such a narrow majority and a bunch of, frankly, people in the caucus who hate our guts anyway? Yeah, it is. And I can promise you his phone's ringing off the hook that he's even doing this today from those people said, hey, you're supposed to protect us. You're not supposed to expose us. Well, he's doing that. So credit to him. Credit to him. I wonder sometimes when people say when someone has never done anything good at all, really. I can't think of anything Mike Johnson has done good in 2 years. All of last year, all of this year. In fact, was he even Speaker last year? When did he come on board? Do you guys remember when it was? Was it this year or was it late last year? It was late last year, right?
Yeah.
Because McCarthy was gone in September, October. So it was late last year. Okay. So we're not even probably to a full calendar year yet then. But I can't think of anything good. He gave us some sound bites, didn't act on them. And it just has been wholly unimpressive. So if you ever raised any kids, when you've got a kid who's the straggler, and then suddenly decides to at least get up off the couch and do something, don't apply for that job. Don't go get that job. That's the wrong job. You can do better. No, you're just sitting there saying, we're moving in the right direction here. This is at least something. Because I can promise you, outside of our world here, of we'll never vote for any more continuing resolutions and all that kind of stuff, outside of the world that we inhabit, which I think we're all learning is a speck of the right and a speck of the country as a whole. The rest of the Republican Party is pissed as hell at Mike Johnson today for doing this. I know this for a fact. They are pissed as hell because he's exposing them. He's going to force them. For every Thomas Massey, and you guys know I love me some Thomas Massey. I just don't agree with him on this for the reasons I'm articulating now. For every Thomas Massey who's just like all continuing resolutions are a scam and I'll never vote for one again, he might even be right about that. But for all the Thomas Masseys out there that are like that, there's like 50 other Republicans who don't even want the SAVE Act at all. And they were fine voting for it as a standalone bill, which they knew had no chance to get through the Democratic Senate, to lie to you, basically, to lie to you. Complete show vote, like the 52 times they voted to repeal Obamacare until they actually had the votes to do it, and then they never did. That's what this party in Washington wants. Show votes to lie to its base, and the Republican Party is an incumbent protection racket. I can promise you, for every Thomas Massey, and there's a lot of crossover between Thomas Massey followers and this audience, but for every Thomas Massey who's like, this is a show vote, I promise you there's over 50 other Republicans pissed as hell at Mike Johnson today because it is a show vote. Like, show me if you really, really want to stop illegals from voting in our elections. And a bunch of Republicans don't. They don't. They just want to tell you that they do. And they want to pass and vote for bills that have no shot of becoming law or doing anything in order to demonstrate that. Well, by linking it up here with a continuing resolution to keep the government open, because that's these kind of Republicans' number one issue. Keep the government open at all costs. Keep funding all of the evil that is currently doing us in at all costs. By doing this, Johnson is exposing them, and I'll give him credit for that. I don't think there's any shot this thing passes today. But that'll be a constructive lesson. Take notes. There'll be a few people, like I said, there'll be a few Thomas Massey good guys who won't vote for it because they're never voting for any more CRs. But you're going to see a bunch of other Republican, maybe names you don't even know, they're going to vote against this today. Not for the same reasons that a Thomas Massey won't, but because they don't want it. And he's forcing their hand to show that. That is constructive. And I will give Mike Johnson credit for that. All right, let's move on. More of that, please. Now, I hope a year, if we get to hold the majority, let's hope like a year from now, we're still not holding these kinds of show votes. We're maybe fighting a little harder, but we weren't fighting at all. I mean, we were doing nothing. I mean, the Republican majority, in air quotes, wasn't even a speed bump. We've at least erected something in the parking lot to slow speeding traffic down at least a little bit. This is progress. So let's keep moving the ball down the field. All right, this isn't a finished product, but this is a big step for Mike Johnson. He is alienating a lot of the kinds of Republicans who have been his fig leaf. So good on him. Keep it up. All right. This Scott Rasmussen poll, again, not to be confused with Rasmussen Polling, his old polling firm that he sold almost 10 years ago now. And now he has his own group that he polls through. But this Scott Rasmussen poll, if you are still in the, I know that we'll just wait until, we'll just take the L here. And everybody will suffer a lot, and then we'll finally get that perfect candidate that we could never get before. If that's you, or your normie neighbor who's like, yeah, I know, man, we can't continue on with this. It's just, he's such a bleep. He's such a bleep. He's just a bleep. Okay. So I guess, I won't ever be able to sell my house that I'm trying to get out from underneath for the next 4 years because I just, I'd be embarrassed to support a guy who posts I hate Taylor Swift on a social media platform almost no one ever sees. Those are a lot of our neighbors too. But if you're in these two camps, man, and you think we've got time for either one of your fantasies, When is time up? Getting pretty close, according to that Scott Rasmussen poll. Getting real close. Just to reiterate, a majority of Democrats are either unsure or in favor of assassinating their primary political opponent. Majority. And almost majority believe he is staging these assassination attempts, which would require him to get the very DOJ and FBI that has been trying to put him in prison for the last several years and prosecute him on multiple fronts. They would have to play along with this. Donald Trump would need, in order to fake these, Donald Trump would need to show a grasp of nuance and subtlety and the ability to draw various coalitions of disagreement together for an act of subterfuge that, frankly, he's never demonstrated he's capable of, which is why a lot of you can't freaking stand him. So pick one. Which is it? You can't have both. And here's what we also can't have both of. We cannot have both of where we are a constitutional republic. I don't know, guys. I think I'm okay with assassinating my political opponents. And this is not necessarily even new. Daniel Horowitz and I were texting back and forth about this morning. And he pointed out to me, hey, remember, 41% of Democrats say they were totally fine with taking people's kids away from them if they didn't want to take that toxic genetic serum jab. Weird. Apparently, if you tell your audience for 9 years that someone is a danger to democracy, they end up believing it. Huh. Funny how that works. But we are at the stage of divorce here, where we are now, where one side no longer wants to be married to the other and is now just going to say things to the other party that it wouldn't say if it still did. It would still be mad. It would still be bitter, disappointed, angry, want out maybe, but was at least entertaining the idea that it was a bad idea to get out. And so there's certain lines you don't cross. The left is crossing all of those lines now verbally. Just verbalizing their fever dreams. You see nascent stages of this actionably. Everything we've seen with Trump, which you see going on in the Nashville area, where I'm headed to speak for the Cheatham County Reagan dinner this weekend, where, 11, 12, 13 pro-lifers, they're trying to put them in the federal penitentiary for praying. Try being a dad who tries rescuing his kid from tranny madness. They come after you instead, right? All these stories we've talked about, these are the opening salvos of where this always goes. Because once you begin to verbalize the things to the other party to demonstrate, I don't want to be with you anymore, then what happens is you go lawyer up, which is what they're already doing now, and you try to do those things to that person. You try to ruin them, try to wreck them. And that's where we are now. Yes, he's literally Hitler. He's Orange Hitler, literally Hitler, and a danger to democracy. Guys, I'm so relieved that he made it through. If you believe that, both of those things cannot be true. They can't. Unless every Democrat, every single one of them is bipolar, which, come to think of it, is possible. But unless they're all bipolar, both of those things cannot be true. They're lying about something. They could lie about both of them too, by the way. But they can't be telling the truth about both of those things at the same time. I mean, if you thought somebody was literally Hitler and you found out he blew out his brains in a bunker, would you be disappointed that Hitler's dead? Who would be like, oh, man, thoughts and prayers to the German people. No, you're like wiping the sweat off your brow. Glad that dude's gone. I mean, if you really think it, that's what you're thinking. No one's like, oh, man, I can't believe Stalin spit the bit here. I'm going to have to ask for the day off. You're like cheering. Hey, still some justice in this world. At least Father Time is still undefeated. So they can't, both of these things cannot be simultaneously true. They can be simultaneously false. One can be true and the other false, and one false and the other true, but they cannot be simultaneously true. And when you're in a poll, and you don't have to go on the record, you don't have to give your name, and you can say what you really, really think. for a majority of Democrats in this country to say they are fine with their primary political opponent being assassinated, or they're unsure. Tick, 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 tock, tick, tock, tick, tock. That's the clock. The clock is ticking. Time is short. Gentlemen, your thoughts?
Well, again, montage and commentary all point me back to what I said yesterday. This is not really an election. This is a trial of the American people to look at evidence like this, to sift it like a jury and render a verdict. What can we tolerate? Where do these breadcrumbs inevitably lead in terms of a reality that we're going to pass down to our children? This is, you know, Trump as the weather is a frustrating reality at times, but even moving on to just that this is a trial of the American people is even more peaceful from an election perspective, because there's so many things with the election you can't control. This is about us, and it should be about us. This is a republic, if you can keep it. Well, are we capable of reading the room at the bare minimum level? What this is right now is clearly unsustainable. So what are we prepared to do? I don't, honestly, that's pretty freeing. The reality that we come away with after this, will, good or bad, will actually be refreshing to me on some level, because we have such a clear choice. All of Trump's nonsense, and there's a lot. There is just such a clear choice. And it really has nothing to do with him or Kamala. It has to do with, are we sane anymore? What do we really care about? Are we that bipolar? Do we want to be known the world over as a punchline? Do we enjoy laughing more at ourselves than we do soberly being the adults in the room? Man, we are going to have some clarity, and I can't wait.
Well, there are no punchlines if you have no humor, so that's kind of a hallmark of the left. This, again, I just want to go back to something that I said last week. 2022 happened. 2022, the midterms, they happened. That is a real thing that happened. Amidst the backdrop of record inflation, amidst the backdrop of just out-and-out cultural Marxists, out in the open, Dick Levine, out in the open for 2 years, we thought finally the Americans, the normies, will wake up. They'll see that we can't have this. This is just embarrassing. Reactionaryism. It didn't happen. It just never materialized. Just across the board for the most part. 2022 happened. You know, Jesse Kelly said a couple weeks ago, you know, by all indications, Donald Trump has this in the bag. But the American people have failed a few stress tests recently. They failed on COVID. They failed on the Summer of Love with George Floyd. And I would add, they failed in 2022.
Yeah.
The writing isn't just on the wall. It's not just on the wall. It's a teabag in your face right now. There is a large element of this country who wants nothing to do with you. Not only do they want nothing to do with you, they don't even want you dead. They want you subjugated. And they're not just writing that on the wall. They're telling that in your face, telling that to you in your face, to your face. Again, what Todd said, it's America on trial. What kind of country are we?
Well said, both of you. Buy, sell, or hold is next. Well, if you are tired of giving your money to people who hate you, unfortunately, you cannot completely avoid that in America today. But one place where you can is with one of these, your mobile phone. Make the switch today to our friends over at Patriot Mobile, because when you do, you'll stop directly giving your money to people who hate you. You'll get the same coverage from the people who hate you you already enjoy, despite their hatred. And you'll actually get a customer service team, though, that you can understand. With their U.S.-based customer service team, that means you can actually understand them. So that's a plus. And they make it as customizable for you as absolutely possible. Keep your phone, switch and upgrade your phone, keep your number, switch your number, whatever you wish to do, they'll customize it for you. And you get a free month of service if you make the switch today at patriotmobile.com/Steve. Make the switch today. That's what our family did. We waited. We hesitated. We put it off. Just thought, man, with all of us and everything going on in the house, be a big hassle. And then one day, T-Mobile sent us a text in the summer of 2020 and said, we're going to start censoring text for COVID misinformation. And I called Patriot Mobile that day and said, all right, you got me. Let's do this. We have not regretted it ever since. All right. And no matter where I go around the country to speak at a major event, they're there as a sponsor. Seen it with my own eyes. All right. So make the call today, patriotmobile.com/Steve. Use the offer code Steve for a free month of service today at patriotmobile.com/Steve. And let's get to it. It is time to play buy, sell, or hold. Aaron has submissions from you in the audience. Todd and I have yet to see them. We will react right now, live and in real time. We will either buy it or sell it. If we hold at any point in time, however, then we have totally and completely punked out and emasculated ourselves. And really, we've outed ourselves as massive violators of the dude code. And if you do that, Todd, if you use your hold, you will be subjected to a closed quarters sponge bath performed by none other than Lindsey Graham.
Nope.
Let's let it rip. Let's go.
All right. Full disclosure, with all of the tech issues we've had today, I did not have a chance to actually select screenshots to put them up on the air. I will get to that as soon as I possibly can. So I do have submissions lined up. I did get to this one, though. This is from the Rooftop Bandit. It's the meme of the anime guy looking at a butterfly, and the butterfly is Trump, the father of the jab, greedy billionaire, thrice married, no need for forgiveness, non-Christian. And it's Steve's face on the anime guy asking, is this John the Baptist? I saw a lot of people really upset with you for that. In a full disclosure, again, I was busy I think this was on Monday's show, maybe during the opening segment. I was busy doing other stuff. So this totally went over my head. But it's from some of the same groups of people who like try to chase clout, chase controversies for engagement, so I kind of discounted it. What was the analogy you were making there? And I saw a lot of people upset. Do you know why they're upset?
The only thing I can think of as to why they're upset is they don't know what the definition of the word metaphor is. I mean, I'm not drawing a little spiritual equivalency. I was just saying, I think that Donald Trump, they are fearful that he is a herald, a forerunner to a movement that may come after him.
So that's what I thought. He would
help to spawn, that would be way more disciplined and effective on a consistent basis than he has proven to be with his mercurial nature. And I thought you saw two examples of that simultaneously yesterday. I thought with Ron DeSantis saying no, these are Florida state crimes that were committed. We're going to exercise our jurisdiction, and we're not going to completely turn this over to the very entities and outlets that have been trying to prosecute the president. We have jurisdiction here. It's not the same thing. He would have to exceed his jurisdiction, which, by the way, I am for. But DeSantis would have to exceed his jurisdiction to interpose on behalf of any January 6thers in the state, because those are federal crimes. But keep in mind, he offered to do that for the New York situation. Said he wasn't going to extradite Trump when people like me pressured him to say that last March. And then the day after he said that, Trump came right out the next day and said, I'm going to extradite myself. Okay. So, but what DeSantis is doing here on the assassination by saying, no, we're going to exercise our jurisdictional authority. We're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to get some answers. And we're just not going to surrender this narrative to the same feds that lie to us about everything else, even invoking the Vegas shooter when he did that. The absolutely ruthlessly efficient messaging. I mean, J.D. Vance could not be any more opposite of Donald Trump. In fact, I'm gonna predict that there will be criticism of Vance soon from the right, by some on the right, that he's too robotic, that he's not mercurial enough, that he's too on point and not relatable. I can see that coming.
He's weird, Steve?
Yeah. Because the dude is like an AI construct. Of if we went to Gronk on X and said, all right, give us a talking point machine to unleash on mainstream media, it would sound an awful lot like what JD Vance sounds like every time he talks. I mean, it is the level of, you have DeSantis is ruthlessly efficient in his governance, and you have Vance is ruthlessly efficient in his messaging. If there are two words that have never been put together where Donald Trump is concerned, it is ruthlessly efficient. And ultimately, that is the threat. If you can be ruthlessly efficient, which means you can cut through the BS of their talking points and not succumb to them, you cannot be dragged down into the muck and mire and the personality contest and the name calling and everything else that they are masters of. But you can, in JD's case, turn it right around on them and punch them right in the balls, right to their face, and do so with no fear and no histrionics, and you don't color outside the lines at all. You don't give them an opening at all. You don't say anything fantastical. You're prepared. You've got your points down. You know your stuff. You're not winging it like Trump at the Kamala debate last week. You're prepped, man. All right. I mean, you are like Ted Williams. You are seeing the seams and stitches on the ball. If that's you, and that's been JD Vance so far in this campaign, there's not an opening isn't left there. There's just not a place to attack there. Let me use a tennis analogy. That JD Vance and Ron DeSantis, by the way, both remind me a lot of the guy who was the dominant tennis player when we were growing up, Pete Sampras. Did not have the flair of Andre Agassi, who was also a great player. Did not have the histrionics of John McEnroe, who was also a great player. All right, the unorthodoxy of being a southpaw like Jimmy Connors, also a great tennis player. But the dude just made no mistakes. None. And the game that you had to play to beat him, you had to get beyond yourself. You had to expand your margin for error to beat him because he was that ruthlessly efficient. Wasn't the biggest, biggest guy in terms of, hey, we want that. That's the athlete we want on the public speaking tour. Wasn't the biggest endorsement guy. He would just dominated all these fools, dominated them. And all the records you see guys breaking today are his. He set all those records. And when it comes to messaging, there's not a wasted syllable where JD Vance is concerned. Nothing is wasted. When it comes to governance, we've said this about Ron DeSantis on this show for the last 3 years. His administration often does things before we even think they should do the stuff. That is the real threat. That you can stay, you're in the Death Star trench and the fire is going and raging and there's blasters going on all around you and you're just aiming right at that thermal exhaust port and you will not be deterred. That's what they cannot tolerate. And I think they are fearful that Trump is the guy here that is going to set a beachhead for this kind of a movement that after he is gone will be ruthlessly efficient, way more efficient than he has ever proven to be in pushing back on them outside of anywhere except, pugilism. That's what they're afraid of. I don't have a clue how that is any kind of some, you may disagree with that take. I might be wrong, but some idea that is some form of sacrilege or idolatry. I guess I don't know what those words mean because I haven't let Donald Trump break my brain like too many people in this era have. One either on the left or the right. You guys are welcome to take a different position on that if you want. I'm fine with that.
Well, I'll buy because I knew this was coming. The instant you... And I understood, I took it in the same way Aaron took it in terms of what you were trying to do. But the instant John the Baptist became the analogy, the greatest prophet, opening the world to Christ, there's a certain part of, they were a part of our audience. Now they're simply living in a troll kingdom where they are very much like heretics of old. Honestly, when the Lord said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar, and render unto God what is God's, they would actually confront the Lord about it. Like, what are you talking about, render unto Caesar? They right. Just, their brains are broken. They are silly. But Really?
And you know what's ironic, Todd? What's ironic here is if you think what I said is idolatry, the idolatry then, therefore, if you don't understand a metaphor that I'm making, and you think what I'm saying is an idolatry, you're taking something like when people say, do I take the Bible as the literal word of God? I do. I just don't take it all literally. When Jesus said, you are the salt of the earth, he did not mean I'm an upright vat of iodine. That's not what he meant. All right. When the Bible says that the Lord owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, it doesn't mean that after when we get to the 1,001th hill, Satan owns that piece of cattle. It's a metaphor. All right. So there's taking things literally and being the literal word of. Okay. So if you're taking me literally and don't understand metaphor, the idolatry, therefore, in my metaphor according to you, is actually not in comparing Trump to John the Baptist. The idolatry, therefore, if you don't understand metaphor and you're taking it straight line literal, then the idolatry is that I connected your boy DeSantis to Christ. You have it backwards. Okay. That's actually the idolatry then. All right. So congrats to you. For outing yourself.
Yeah, I even saw one person who's actually been a guest, I think, multiple times on this show, come at you and say, "It's not John."
Tell me who it was. I didn't see any of this.
It was Justin Hart. I saw Justin Hart say, "It's not John the Baptist." I saw I just looked up the clip that was going around. I don't recognize who actually posted it originally, but it was like a 24-second clip, and it never actually included the metaphor that you were trying to make.
It
was just a completely out of context clip.
Mm-hmm. We can't have.
It's just pathetic. It really is.
Listen, I live in a world regularly where a bunch of people say they respect me about everything I've ever done, except I'm also going to hell because I'm Catholic. I mean,
this is the same group of people who even last week, and you're not voting. I'm not watching the debate, but Donald Trump should have handled the 3-on-1 moderators, and then you turn around and post a completely out of context, really slanderous clip.
This is a Gnostic heresy that goes way back. The Albigensians.
You're getting increasingly desperate.
Yes, that in Spain were part of the reason for the Inquisition. These people that they feel honestly, they'll tell you that. About the consequences of sin at a level of total depravity that makes Steve look like a wallflower, but somehow they also simultaneously, I am clean over here on the other side. I am untouched by the world. I mean, you talk about contradiction here, Steve. Their entire life is contradiction.
So everything in that meme that was said about Trump is true. Here's what's also true. All of his adult children adore him, have stayed away from the sorts of things that we have seen celebrity children destroyed by time and time again. Yet they've all seemingly avoided them. They've had their own issues, divorces here or there, but none of them are involved in major criminal scandals, substance abuse, none of that. All right. Donald Trump signed historic peace accords in the Middle East. That's part of his record. Donald Trump appointed the justices that overturned Roe versus Wade. That's part of his record.
You're making the point. It's not really about Trump. It's about everybody else and what they see in him. It's a Rorschach test or a ink blot test.
Correct. I mean, and listen, mercy triumphs over judgment. Okay. To look at someone's life and only judge them by the worst possible moments they could have, I just don't think that's the biblical standard, actually. I mean, God loves mercy so much, he died for it. Okay. Now, mercy doesn't cancel the judgment. There is a judgment. And if Donald Trump does not repent and truly own up to his sins to the Lord Jesus Christ, he will suffer that judgment. Okay. But that is not you and I's purview to do. And to just take a few things and isolate those and not look at the entire picture. If you want to look at the entire picture and then say, the mistakes Trump made on those other fronts, I cannot support. They just balance out the good he's done. I totally respect that opinion, may or may not disagree. But if you're not going to look at the good somebody did, there are people right now who don't have jobs because Trump is not president. There are people right now who could buy and sell a home who can't now because they couldn't when Trump was president, but they can't now. Yes. Those things are there's war. There are people dying in Israel in the Middle East right now who were not when Trump was president. Those things are just not even debatable and disputable. They're just not. So if that's not good enough for you because of the mistakes he made, and it's funny too, like now you guys seemingly care about medical freedom more than Robert F. Kennedy Jr. does. Now you seemingly care about Trump what Trump did to Ron DeSantis more than Ron DeSantis does. I mean, you guys are. I got to give you credit. You're amazing. You care more about these things than the actual leaders who bled and died for them did. You're truly amazing, special people. Well done.
Let's move on to Aaron Riali, which this one feels appropriate. Buy, sell, or hold. Christians and conservatives on X are far too willing to write off, disown, and often vilely attack our own over disagreements undeserving of such behavior. And it's often instigated by otherwise good pastors saying benign things while never taking responsibility for what follows.
I'll buy that for sure. And frankly, I've probably been a part of that. Because that's a sliding scale too. I mean, what is grievance? What's going too far? And I don't know. We all have our own standards where that's concerned, and we probably all think that we are following as best we can what the biblical standard for that is. And we're going to have differences of opinion there. But I can think of like an institution. I've only got it thought about this, like created like an institution where certain rules of engagement where ethics are concerned, would be like clearly communicated to the members and the brethren. And there would be, clearly like some guidelines and bylaws of what to do and what not to do and what's good and what's bad. But alas, apparently he didn't think of that.
Yeah, and this is where sports bro culture, a lot of them where it overlaps with the sports bros are Christians. You can tell their pursuit of this. If you took away whatever their tribe is and you put on their sports team, they would be talking about it the exact same way, and that's a huge problem.
All right, let's move on. We'll go to this. This is one heck of a list, if I may say so myself. Jeffrey Preston Bezos' Stan account has the top 10 memory hold stories and events of the last few years. Number 10, the unregulated Chinese-run biolab discovered in Reedley, California by code enforcement officer. Number 9, the Nord Stream pipeline. Number 8, the Afghanistan withdrawal. Number 7, the Epstein client list. Number 6, the Hunter Biden laptop. 5, Trump assassination attempt number 2. 4, J6 prisoners. 3, the Vegas shooting. 2, Trump assassination attempt number 1. And number 1, all things COVID.
And whether or not we concern that list is why I think this is a trial of the American people.
I agree. I agree. I think this is a spiritual wellness check of the people. I agree. Because it's not even necessarily the differences between these people and Trump, but the differences between these people and us. That's really what Republic voting means. More in a moment. All right, we're back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erzin, Aaron McIntyre, and all of you. And don't forget that all of you can let us know what you think about what we think, though hopefully not all at once, by emailing the show, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on Twitter X, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok. Again, that's DEACE. Don't forget, if you're a podcast aficionado, thank you. Please hit the 5-star review on your podcast platform of preference. The more of those we get, apparently it helps the show all the more. I don't know how that works, but I do know it helps my ego all the more, so keep that going. And then also make sure to hit subscribe, or in the case of iTunes, follow, and that will make sure that every time we do one of these episodes, it'll show right up there in your podcast feed every single time. This portion of the show brought to you by our friends over at Constitution Wealth. Don't let your retirement dollars, your investment portfolio, become a weapon against everything you hold dear. Don't work all your life and demonstrate and confirm and show these values only to then have all the money that you earned with all that hard work be put to work against those values at the end of your life. All right. Pass on the legacy you want with our friends at Constitution Wealth. They can help you secure a rock solid investment plan that reduces the grip that these woke schemes like ESG and DEI may have on your portfolio, help you to also stop funding corporations that are big into the various cultural influences that are importing all kinds of rot gut into the culture as well. How do you use your proxy vote if you're a shareholder and have your voice be heard for your values? They can help you with all of that and more, all right, if you go with our friends at Constitution Wealth. So take action now. Visit constitutionwealth.com/blaze. So many of you have signed up already. Let's keep it going. And you can sign up for a free consultation today. That's constitutionwealth.com/blaze. Get a free consultation today at constitutionwealth.com/blaze. All right, the bottom of the hour, Daniel Horowitz and I are going to be here. We are going to entertain a subject that I honestly did not have on my bingo card. But I got to tell you, you know what the hardest job in this company is? In the entire company? Constructing the Pat Gray bingo card. That has to be the hardest job in this entire company. With what goes on nowadays, do you guys know how in the Hades you could possibly construct that? I mean, it's nuts. It's just crazy. Okay? So none of us we're going to have to discuss what happens if they successfully assassinate our candidate next time on the bingo card of talking points to discuss here on the show. But here we are. And maybe we should have thought about it. After all, we did spend a good deal of time of what happens if they throw our candidate in prison. We did discuss that. We were one of the first shows to entertain that, actually. So maybe maybe we're the naive ones. Maybe we should have guessed and put it on the Pat Gray bingo card that if they're going to put him in prison, then why wouldn't they try to kill him? So they've tried it twice. So what were to happen if, sadly, they did? We'll discuss that with Daniel Horowitz coming up at the bottom of the hour. All right, let's get back to some buy, sell, or hold, Aaron.
All right, uncontexted 2, or uncontexted, I always mess up his name. Uncontexted Deace 2 Electric Boogaloo says Lindsey Graham plans to get to the bottom of Diddy's freak-offs a whole bunch of times.
Oh, buy that. Buy that.
That's pretty self-evident, yeah.
That is, that's 2 plus 2 math right there. Anybody could do that math. Absolutely anybody. And what are the odds that that P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, as he was known when we were growing up, what are the odds that he'll be joining Ghislaine Maxwell as going to prison for sex trafficking to apparently nobody? What are the odds of that, do you think?
High. Pretty
high. Yeah. I think is Sean's real crime acquiring more blackmail material than the 3-letter agencies have? Like you're not allowed to do that, right? Maybe that was also Jeffrey Epstein's crime, come to think of it. Like you cannot acquire more blackmail material than the regime does. And if you do, you have to go, right?
I think that's also a high likelihood, yes.
Yeah.
Next, we go to Adrian Slade. Kamala Harris's commitment to DEI is ultimately what will drive her campaign into a ditch.
Sell. I wish that she may end up losing, but driving it into a ditch, that should have happened already for any number of reasons in a sane society. There's no ditch coming.
I agree. And I think we need to, again, I want to win. And anybody who's ever led an organization or coached a team will tell you, you don't improve your odds of winning by disrespecting your opponent. You just don't. Okay? I mean, Kirby Smart, let me tell you who the happiest coach in America is right now. In any sport. In any sport. It's Kirby Smart at Georgia. I've got all these 5-star guys, okay? And I've won 2 out of the last 3 natties. And might have even won it last year, except we lost a game to Alabama at the end of the year. We're number 1. We go play Kentucky, who always plays us tough on the road. All right, we end up winning the game. They knock us down from number 1. And now I've got something to yell at guys about. Something to refocus them. See, they don't believe in you. They think you're schmucks. There's a reason why Michael Jordan, in between winning 6 NBA titles, like nobody respects us. That edge helps. Helps. Complacency does not help your instincts on any level. Disrespecting your opponent does not help on any level. There's a reason why the greats, there's a reason why Nick Saban used to call it rat poison. There's a reason why the greats are always looking for an angle, something to keep them on edge. Or to quote the best of the Rocky films, in my opinion, to have that eye of the tiger. There's a reason why. So we need, if we want to win, I think we should give them some credit. That doesn't mean when I say credit, it's just like what I said about a metaphor. I don't literally believe Donald Trump is morally equivalent to the greatest man ever born of women, according to Jesus. I'm not making that equivalency morally. It's a metaphor. And when I say we should give them credit, I'm not saying approval. Credit and approval are not the same thing. But give them credit. She stood up there and executed that convention speech. Hey, I doubt you're going to be watching that speech for the rest of your life in terms of great moments in history. But You're not watching. We're not playing many clips of that speech afterwards either, of her like flubbing the thing either. Have you noticed that? She at least survived that debate, maybe even won it, when you grade on the scale of the expectations for both. Those are probably going to be the two biggest tests she'll be forced into passing as a candidate on her own. She passed. They're not just gonna flub this for us, guys. We're just not gonna sit around and we're not gonna Iowa football this thing, okay? We're going to gain 150 total yards, and at the end of the game, we're going to punt it to the other team. They're going to drop it. We're going to recover it and win. That's not how this works. That's not a strategy for victory at this level. We're up against people that own every single institutional advantage they own. So even when they have bad days, all the institutional advantages are going to pick them right back up and get them on the right track. Now, I'm not trying to demoralize you either. We can win this thing. I look at the registration numbers of the early voting in Pennsylvania, and I'm encouraged when I see that. I can promise you, whatever your excuse is for those numbers, Democrats are not happy with the early voting numbers in Pennsylvania. I can promise you that. That is not what they were hoping for. But it's very rare to win by disrespecting your opponent. And it rarely, if never, helps you to win by doing so. It doesn't put you in the right mindset. Moving on.
All right, switching gears. This is from Federalist 21, Mount Rushmore of NFL defenses. Number 4, Doomsday. What was that defense?
Dallas Cowboy Doomsday defense of the 70s. Okay. That's Randy White and those guys, yeah. Bob Lilly, yeah.
3, the 2000 Ravens. Number 2, the 85 Bears. And number 1, the Steel Curtain.
I mean, I think that the first 3 are no-brainers. It's just a matter of what order you put them in. The most dominant unit we've ever seen in terms of eye test is the 85 Bears. I mean, they just made NFL teams look like, they were college guys. People have really underrated how great the Ravens 2000 defense was. That's one of the few teams to win a Super Bowl without a difference maker at quarterback. They won one with Trent Dilfer as a game manager. I mean, that defense statistically was absolutely phenomenal. In terms of era, I mean, the Steel Curtain is the greatest, most famous defense in the history of football. So I'm fine with those 3 in any order you would have put them in. I would have been fine with. I'd probably put the 85 Bears number 1, but I can't fault you for putting the Steel Curtain there. I'm fine with number 4, the Doomsday defense. You had the Orange Crush. The Minnesota Vikings had an entire defensive line that is in the Hall of Fame with the Purple People Eaters. If they just win like one of those 4 Super Bowls, I mean, to me, they're unquestionably on that Mount Rushmore. So, but it's not like those Doomsday defenses from Dallas were famous too. So I'll live with that. But I think that's the most questionable. The first 3, I think, are without question.
Yeah, that's fine.
Next, we will go to Brian Rose. If by some miracle Trump wins, he'll never be allowed to take the oath of office. Either the unthinkable happens and he's assassinated, or there will be massive riots that'll cause the total state to declare martial law.
I'll buy as a value bet. There's just enough there that, there's nothing like... This is a trial of the American people, absolutely. But if they find enough, and the margin Steve talks about, 1%, 2%, the enemy is coming, absolutely. Sports analogies. My world is soccer. When goals are at a premium, there's just not points all over the board. One thing there's the excitement, the euphoria, because a high-scoring game is 3 or 4 goals. If it's a 2-1 matchup, the euphoria of the goal oftentimes temporarily anesthetizes the team that just scored, and the team that just got scored on comes with a vengeance for like 5 minutes, and if you're not ready for it, and that's why I'm buying on this as a value bet. The odds of this are high enough that you need to be concerned.
I was almost going to say verbatim what you ended up saying. So I will buy. These are things I don't even want to speak into existence, but I'm about to do a segment about, here at the bottom of the hour, what happens if they actually get him next time. I do think we're in an era now that we have to entertain such things. Okay, we watched, I mean, the amount of gaslighting as we watched the country go up in flames. We had to be locked down while they rioted in the streets. All the gaslighting on masks and everything else. I just don't know how. This is not the time and place to be taking stuff off the menu for consideration, okay? And I say this as someone that is adamant that we can't allow ourselves to go crazy because they've done the same. But remaining sane is not the same. The sane does not mean stupid, and sane does not mean naive, okay? And so I think this is an era for putting stuff on the table to consider, not taking it off.
All right, moving on, we will go to Veronica Marquez. Come November 1st, if Trump is still leading in the polls, someone on the left will publicly offer up a reward for the successful assassination of President Trump. We're Kathy Griffin. We've done the severed head before. Can you see somebody like that?
You bet, like a tongue, even if it's just a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. I don't really mean it. Okay, just a joke. Yeah. You guys think that that's not an applause line on Jimmy Kimmel Tonight? Is that show even still on, by the way? Okay, because I know he said he was leaving. I just don't know when. But that's not an applause line on Jimmy Kimmel Tonight? Stephen Colbert in between dancing on the vax scene with, men dressed up as hypodermic needles? Doesn't just roll that out. Ha, 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 we're just kidding, guys. Ha, 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 ha. Yeah, of course I could see that happening. You bet. Bye. That's probably, sadly, that's not nearly as radical as that lovely lady probably thinks that it is. I'll buy. Okay.
Why would this be extreme when the poll on the show today says more than half of Democrats think he should have been assassinated, or they're not sure whether that's a good idea or not? Of course, that's going to happen.
By the way, when I scheduled that topic with Daniel yesterday, we had no idea Scott Rasmussen was going to come out with that poll. No idea. I said this to Daniel, hey, we probably are as equipped as anybody to have a sober conversation about what happens if they actually get him. What's the process look like? He's like, I agree. We had no idea that we had that conversation right after the show yesterday. We had no idea this morning Scott Rasmussen was going to roll that poll out. No idea. So the timing is serendipitous, man.
Okay, moving on. You ready for this, Steve?
You bet.
Pat Oney. Buy, sell, hold on these Michigan football election analogies. Number one, Michigan football is like the Democrats in the 2020 election. They cheated. Everyone outside the fans knows they cheated, yet won a national championship/election, and they immediately returned to sucking after doing so.
Well, we don't know that they sucked. They're ranked in the top 25. They went out there and beat all the best teams on their schedule after everybody supposedly changed their signs and the guy that knew all this was gone. So the first one, we don't even know the answer to the first one yet. We don't. So I don't know how you could possibly buy that. I mean, they're ranked in the top 25 right now. They don't suck, so sell.
Well, I'll buy. They're certainly a different team. Now, one thing I will not say, Michigan should
definitely
not
a different team when you lose 19 guys. To
well,
the
yeah,
National
that's why
Football
I'm
League
saying
draft.
they're a different team, and there's gray. And I'm not one, and I never said based on the evidence before us that whatever version is out there right now of what they did is worthy of them being stripped of a national championship. They beat great teams. I think they were a great team. That's why this is so sad, because they definitely did cheat. That's undeniable. Now, who the they is still a gray area and all that, but we don't know enough of it that says they did not deserve that national championship. But because they did win the national championship and now things are different, they're a different team. There's enough there that I will buy.
Next, the NCAA is like an inept GOP Congress conducting investigations into Michigan.
I don't know how they could say they were inept. They got Jim Harbaugh suspended for half a season without a letter of inquiry, without a hearing, nothing. That's never happened before in the history of the NCAA. Never. There's never been preemptive leaks of NCAA allegations or reports to the media. Never happened ever before until now. No, I don't agree with that at all. That one's just not. There's even less basis for number 2 than there is for number 1. They got the guy without a trial, without a defense, without a hearing. I mean, I don't even know how you could possibly come to that conclusion. I really don't.
Todd?
Well, I'll buy again. There's enough there in that they could. Where this goes from here, because it's still, the pot is still boiling. This could end up it is very unclear who's going to look worse at the end of this, the NCAA or Michigan football, because this is being strung out. If you keep going after this, there better be some there. Otherwise, there's a possibility that there's a redemptive story at the end for Michigan.
Number 3, Connor Stalions is like Hunter Biden with all his shady dealings, stealing signs, and sneaking onto the other team's sidelines.
So I'm going to afford the accommodation I was apparently not granted by Justin Hart and a few other people who don't know metaphor and assume that this is a metaphor, of course. Okay. And not a situational equivalency. So I'm not even going to entertain anything other than that, because I'm going to assume that it would be silly to put those two things on the same moral playing field. All right. But as someone who actually knows Connor Stalions, he's the even if you agree with that, even if you thought he cheated, he's just a completely different person in terms of level of discipline. I mean, this guy's a Marine, celebrated soldier. The intent here, even if you think he cheated, was to level the playing field while other people were paying guys and recruits under the table, and Michigan wouldn't do that, and other schools weren't getting punished for that. We had numerous recruits offered all kinds of huge amounts of money, even say so on the record. Nothing was ever done. I mean, to me, that's not the same as attempting to grift off of someone else's name. So I don't think situationally they're analogous at all. And I don't even think you can make that case, even if you think that Connor Stalions is a cheater.
I'll buy. He's absolutely a cheater. The only people who don't think he's a cheater aren't Michigan fans.
Well, I didn't say that you couldn't think he was a cheater. That wasn't the question. The question is he analogous to Hunter Biden? That was the question.
Well, a cheater, a scofflaw, a whatever he is, and this is what being a sports bro does to you. It takes all. It's even worse because he's a Marine. It makes you so stupid, and you don't apply the rules you have for apparently every other part of your life. For hey, go team! Of course, it took what should be a celebration of physical excellence, and people just made it dumb. This is a great cautionary tale of being a sports pro. How do you become a Marine into this? It's pathetic.
Oh, I think Marines have to make a lot of decisions that are probably closer to the ones that were made here than live in a world where everything is cut and dried.
Do not compare making a Michigan sideline decision to being a Marine. And no, don't do that.
I didn't compare them. I didn't. What I said is I think Marines live in a world where you don't always get to make cut and dried decisions all the time. That's what I think.
Number 4.
There's no semper fi to what he did. He let the Marines down.
Totally disagree. I think Connor Stalions is a freaking folk hero, but go ahead.
That's ridiculous. How is that guy? He cheated.
Jim Harbaugh.
Even if he did. Well, first of all, we could have this argument all day. You cannot cite for me the rule that he broke. No one can. No one can cite the rule.
He's a cheater.
We've done this a million times, but even if he did, I don't care, because we're in a sport where everybody cheats all the time and everybody gets away with it. Totally fine.
See, look at how that's not a standard we have for any other part of life. But it's important enough.
I'm totally okay with it.
It's not a war.
Okay.
A war?
I'm totally okay.
It's not a war.
If you're in a battle and
it's not a battle. It's not a war. It's a game.
I'm totally okay.
See, this is what being a sports bro does. It takes every standard you have for every other part of life and you throw it out because go team. It's not worth it. It's not worth it.
Well, apparently we couldn't have won the national championship without doing it, so I guess it is worth
it. I didn't make that claim.
It's got to be one way or the other. You can't claim we won the championship without it and then say it wasn't worth it, so which one was it? You know?
I didn't.
If you want to say that, if you want to
cheated.
take that position, that's fine. Fine. I'm totally okay with everything he did. To me, the only mistake he made was going to the Central Michigan sideline. That was beyond ridiculous. And I do that's the thing he should have never done.
Was that against the rules?
No.
See,
no, not at all. It opened up a different level.
There's a level.
Opened up a different level of scrutiny that was not necessary.
It's about character. And there's not a written rule for everything about it. And everybody knew this 2 seconds ago. But
I don't think there's any.
This is why
I don't think
smash
there's
all
any
the idols.
character question at all about
smash all
doing
the
something.
idols.
It's not even illegal to steal people's signs. So
Smash
I don't think there's
all
a
the
character
idols.
issue at all.
This is a giant idol.
It's not even
and
illegal to
it's
steal
making us
signs.
stupid, and the men of America are letting their entire nation down because they think like this about this.
I'm not going to lecture a guy who's a Marine on letting the nation down, but you're welcome to do that.
Why? What default do they get? Look what he did.
Because he is a Marine, and I'm sitting in a basement.
That doesn't mean he
with a
gets
dad
to do
bod.
what it. Marines have gone off and committed crimes afterwards. No.
That's why.
God, we got to stop this.
Number 4.
No, I'm good with this. I'm enjoying it, actually. We can keep
too.
it going the whole show. I'm liking it.
Jim Harbaugh is like Joe Biden, conveniently stepping down as the Michigan head coach to run to the NFL/basement/nursing home ahead of the election or NCAA investigation.
You'd have to sell. He's already been punished. Joe Biden's faced nothing. Jim Harbaugh's already he's already received a 4-year show cause order. He didn't run away from anything. Nothing. He got a 4-year show cause order. That's like SMU level death penalty stuff. He didn't run away from anything. He's already received the punishment for it.
He knew all his folksy get better, not be bitter things were only going to take him so far. He had to have a lawyer come out and cover for him and say he did not knowingly mislead. I mean, he knew that he had to get the hell out of here. So now he could just sit there, you know, behind the podium as a Charger coach.
I think Jim Harbaugh would have left for the NFL regardless. Anyway, flirted with the job with the NFL for the last few years. He'd taken Michigan as far as it could go. They've presented no evidence whatsoever. The show cause was actually for the burger stuff, not even for this. They didn't bring it. They're still to this day. I mean, the Big Ten's report last year when it suspended him.
Why does he have to have lawyers cover for him for knowing I did not knowingly mislead? That happened.
You don't think people should have legal representation? We're against that now?
But again, we're about lying and cheating, and this is what it's about. He's up to his eyeballs in it.
The NCAA can bring lawyers, but you shouldn't. You shouldn't have any legal representation?
I didn't say he should have legal. Okay. Why is the lawyer saying he did not knowingly mislead?
Well, what would you want him to say? I don't understand this complaint.
The complaint is because of... He just got in there. He was behind the Chargers podium saying, I don't lie and I don't cheat.
Right.
It's clear he lied and he cheated.
Okay, how is it clear? What evidence has been presented that it's clear? The Big Ten did a report last year and said in the report they had no evidence that Harbaugh knew about any of this. It's right there in the Big Ten report. And then they turned around and suspended him anyway. Those are simple facts. I mean, I didn't write the report. Tony Petitti did. He's the one that wrote he had no evidence that Harbaugh knew, and then suspended him anyway. That's a fact. That's indisputable. It's right there in the report.
Final point. Sharon Moore is like Kamala Harris. He became the head coach/nominee by being born on third base, not winning a single primary election. This one, I think, is probably the most unfair analogy. He actually won some big games last year.
Yeah, but I think he did win some big games last year, but of all of them, this is, I think, the most applicable because we don't know. Okay. The guy's never been a head coach before, never had to stand on his own 2 feet before. And yes, he coached some big games and won some big games last year, but Jim was there all week long preparing the team. That doesn't take away the actual experience of leading a team on game day in those pressure situations. But of all of the analogies here that I think are all flawed, I think this one is the most basis of possibly turning out to be true. So I'll buy. I'm
just not going to give him the benefit of the doubt after he cried on the sidelines for how hard Michigan life had been last year. That was pretty ridiculous.
Oh, that's the best moment I think he's had as a coach. Loved it.
Crying. It
was, man. Freaking loved it. Absolutely loved it. Tears of joy after beating the crap out of your opponent on national TV and running it down their throats 32 times in a row and saying, we won't even try to throw, you still can't beat us. You're damn right. I'd be crying tears of joy after something like that as well. Absolutely just emasculating my opponent on national TV after that. Hell yeah. I got some tears for that. You bet. Loving it.
You know, sports bro is a hell of a drug, man. Hell of a drug.
It is, especially when you're winning natties. You bet. It's a hell of a drug.
No, we're going to see how long that drug lasts.
It's going to last pretty long. I'm on it, so I'll be the one to tell you how long it lasts.
Oh, yeah, you're on it.
I'm the expert, so I'll tell you how long it'll last. It's going to last pretty damn long. I'm going to be honest with you. pretty damn long.
Pat Oni, you magnificent word that starts with B and ends with tard. That might be one of my favorite submissions that we have ever taken on this program during this segment. But we must move on. Kurt says if Trump was really behind in the polls, they wouldn't be trying to assassinate him. That's a take that I've seen multiple times. What's your take?
Sell.
I think there's some justification for that take for sure. Okay. At the very least, they're not comfortable with their current margin of error.
Yeah.
I think we could say that at least. And so on those grounds, I'll buy. Yeah.
I agree with Steve's analysis there. I'm just selling because it's not, there's just way too much uncertainty in there. Yeah.
Kitten Stock Supplier says the pager memes are giving the cat memes a run for their money.
I got to be honest, they are. Okay.
They're good.
I mean, that one with the 72 virgins on your pager and you look down, that one in particular gets me every single time. Okay. Every single time. I mean, it's a little early, I'll sell. It's a little early, okay? Because the cat memes were, I mean, it's enough. If you get me involved in your meme culture, it's a good meme. If I'm like, okay, I got to take part in this. This is so good. And, I must have shared like 5 or 6 cat memes, maybe a couple of the pager memes. So I think it's a little premature for this take yet, but my hope is that the Israelis keep doing this to these jihadists so that we keep priming that pump and keep putting them out. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'm selling just because we love the chuckle hut aspect of things. Do you know what this really should be asking us, though, about bringing our manufacturing back home?
Yeah.
Really? I mean, are you going to go out and buy the next cell phone with the same... Guys, think.
Yeah.
But we don't want to because, sports bro and stuff. So.
That is a prescient point.
I mean, can we go back to this for a second? Do you know what psychologically this does to them, though?
They're going to have to start using carrier pigeons.
Yeah, that's right. To never know the stuff that you use and the devices you use to get around being monitored, what that does to you, your enemy psychologically, what you're saying to them, there is nothing, nowhere you can go, nowhere you cannot retreat, that we will not find you. That is devastating psychological warfare, even more than it's humorous watching them blow these guys' balls off. All right, we'll come back. Daniel Horowitz is going to join us here next. Stay tuned. Back here on the Steve Deace Show, brought to you by our friends over at Hillsdale College. They have so many great tools to help equip you because they are really the leaders for defending liberty on the battlefield of education. And one of the ways that they want to equip you is with the Hillsdale College Podcast Network, whether it's the Larry Arnn Show, the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour, their online courses podcast. All of these are top-notch. You can find them on all your major podcast platforms, or you can just go to daceforhillsdale.com. Get more information there. FOR, daceforhillsdale.com. Get more information about the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. Let's hope it'll be your second favorite next to us. Your second favorite new group of podcasts, Hillsdale, is where you can go. And you can find it at daceforhillsdale.com. That's daceforhillsdale.com. So many great resources there, and this is just the latest one at daceforhillsdale.com. Let's bring in our good friend Daniel Horowitz here at the Blaze. And, when you and I yesterday afternoon, Daniel, discussed the possibility of talking about the topic we're about to address, we had no idea that Scott Rasmussen was going to come out with a poll this morning that he did. It was not out yet, had not been released yet. And for those that are just tuning in again, not to be confused with Rasmussen Polling, he started that firm. He sold it about 10 years ago, and he started his own independent venture now. But Scott Rasmussen has a poll out today that shows a majority of Democrats either are in favor of assassinating Trump or unsure. It also shows 49% of Democrats believe that Trump is managing to bend the lawfare state that's been prosecuting him for the last few years into going along with staged assassination attempts. 49% of Democrats believe that he is staging them. And needless to say, we're crossing lines here that usually leads you in a divorce court in a marriage. When you start saying the things about the other party that you held back before, you start wishing bad things upon the other party that you held back before. So I think there's even more grounds to have this conversation than maybe we thought 24 hours ago. So let's just start with this question. What happens if they end up assassinating Trump here?
Sure. So honestly, Steve, and I don't want to presuppose that and make it like it would be a good thing, but unlike the attempted assassinations where you still have Trump as the choice, I actually think if it actually did happen, Republicans would win it in a landslide. I really do. I think the normie voters would come over sympathy-wise, and then they wouldn't be voting for the men anymore. Presumably, again, to indulge that hypothetical, it would be J.D. Vance. So I do think they would win. I think that now it's not moving the needle. When he was actually hit, a little bit, and then someone was killed, it didn't move the needle. So certainly something that didn't really get off the ground. I don't think it's going to change anything. And that's the sorry state of normie America. I mean, this is where we are. Nothing changes.
I agree that's where we are now. If this happens a third, fourth, fifth time?
No.
You don't think there's a volume effect of where it prorates and accumulates? You don't think so?
No, Steve. And I think the problem that people are missing in this analysis is that everything becomes about Trump. But there's something broader here. See, it's not as bad as it is. It's not unfathomable that you could have, 5 minutes of hate for the leader of the movement you hate and make him into Hitler and he deserves to die. But I'll do you one better, Steve. You had January 2022. So this is a year after the vaccines came out and we knew it was so bad that the Florida Department of Health had already been recommending against them at that point. Yet a YouGov Economist poll, you remember that, and there might have been a few of them, showed that 45% of registered Democrats felt that their fellow citizens that didn't get the shot should be incarcerated, and a majority of them felt that they should suffer some sort of punitive action, either a fine or certainly be restricted from accessing public accommodations and things like that. So the point is, we're living through the 1967 social experiment called the third wave, where you're able to get people hyped up on a blood libel, okay? You're a threat. Your existence, your views are a threat to my security, okay? So my health is under threat. COVID, BLM, your racism is a threat to me, so we could just burn everything down. January 6th, you guys are the violent ones, so then we have the right to take away your rights and then be violent to you. Or Ukraine, which actually intersects with this attempted assassination. They were able to get people that couldn't find a freaking place on a map to obsess about it. I mean, really, like care about something that they didn't even know.
To the point that one of them tried to kill the president last Sunday, for example.
And that's been the guy's life. Yeah. I mean, he went over there and has been recruiting. And now, obviously, I think we all understand and sense there's something. He's not a typical normie militarized Democrat voter. There's something more going on there, that he was giving interviews with the New York Times and Semaphore and things like that.
Showing up in BlackRock ads. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think what is fair to say is, and this is what scares me, historically, this has been among an uneducated population, maybe even a criminal underbelly of society. What the left has done in recent years, again, this puts Trump on a shelf for a minute. Trump could ride off into the sunset tomorrow, and the same thing would be true. They have militarized the college-educated, a large segment of college-educated whites that are very much not within the profile of a criminal element, that would
that's many of the Antifa members, for example. That's who much of Antifa is what you're describing. Yeah,
exactly. That they will look at you with a level of, like, I'll put you in a gas chamber. I mean, that's what we saw with COVID. That's why we wrote the book we did. And typically, historically, you didn't see this much, but that was obviously one era where you saw an educated population. You're able to, within a short period of time, militarize them to the point that they will justify and even participate in violence against people that you have convinced are a threat to their existence. And I think that's what this sort of Ryan Routh thing represents, that where he comes from, there are a lot of people that are willing to break all social norms, break all legal norms, and do anything they can to take away your liberties for sure, but possibly your life.
Which is the opposite of what we have typically seen in societies, right? It's the downtrodden, the desperate.
Yep.
I'm poor and black, and that's why Louis Farrakhan's message is attractive to me. Okay, it's not typically the kinds of people that you're describing are typically the let them eat cake people. They're not typically the storm the Bastille people, but that's been flipped on its ear, is what you're saying.
In other words, when you talk about a potential third, fourth, fifth attempt, I will predict right now, I doubt you will see it emanate from like a Bloods or Crips sort of Farrakhan follower, Black Panther guy, inner city gangbanger. No, it will be someone like a Ryan Routh.
That guy's never seen an episode of Joy Reid one time. Never seen that stuff. That guy's never seen, Mika and Joe in the morning. Never watched any of that stuff. Couldn't name a CNN anchor. All right. It is largely, regardless of the melanin level of the people on the camera, in front of the camera, the people watching this are largely semi-affluent, college-educated whites. They're the ones watching all of this. Yes. And
that's what destroys the civilization. You can't go on like that. I mean, I have seen this countless times. I know you've seen this. We talked about this a lot during COVID. And this was really a problem back then, where we would see, you'd go into a store. My wife would be in a store with our 2-year-old daughter, smiling, looks like Goldilocks there. And typically people would come along and, smile at the baby or whatever, and viciously get in her private space and say, you better put on a mask, even in places where, it wasn't required. I saw stories of a rape victim I had told to me who wasn't wearing a mask. And when, someone confronted her, she actually said her story, and the person was like, F you.
Mm-hmm. And these people are legion. I mean, they're everywhere.
They're everywhere. They're everywhere. I just had this on a plane. I was having a private conversation with someone. I was saying, hey, I'm worried about the apathy on our side. I met the guy who seems to be a conservative, and my voice doesn't project. We were speaking very quietly. A guy across
and it's on a plane,
aisle,
which is not easy to hear crosstalk on a plane anyway. But
yeah. So it was crosstalk, and all of a sudden I heard, except for on January 6th. I was like, what? I didn't even know where it came from. And it's like, that's the type of thing you and I, as emphatically as we believe our views, we just wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But this is, and again, it was a white male, looked like he probably had a good job. And this is the sort of problem we have now, that we have this militarized society. Now, not that I want our side to be assassinating their people and being violent and just violating even social norms, much less taking away rights. But I will say, this is the asymmetry between the sides. This is a side that constantly speaks to the theology, the morality, the truths to their untruths, to their immorality. Our side is just busy with nonsense like, oh, a Bruce could be a Caitlyn, but out of the pool, fairness in female sports is like the extent of the issue there. We'll find some sort of oblique way to argue a black and white truth. And I think therein lies the asymmetry between the sides. And it's why the clock is ticking. And we got to at least shore up our own areas so we could at least evacuate to them. Because the punchline of all this is you cannot share a country with this.
All right, more on this in a second from Daniel Horowitz after we talk about, speaking of things you cannot share a country with. I mean, Biden's just out there openly saying, or at least the script writers that are placing the script in front of him are openly saying, we're going to stack the court. You've got Democratic candidates for Congress running on this out in the open all over the country. Now, Daniel and I have done extensive work on what an independent judiciary means. But when they talk about an independent judiciary, it's not the stuff Daniel and I are talking about. I mean, they wanted a judiciary that's independent of the Constitution, independent of the people. and therefore is just able to, via coercive will, impose anything on you that would never pass muster at the ballot box. That's what they mean. Okay, and you can't share a country with that either. So our friends at First Liberty are attempting to gin up the support to do something about this. If you want to sign their petition, get more information on their organization. They have done a lot of outstanding lawfare work from the right. That's Kelly Shackelford in that outfit for many, many years now. You can have your voice be heard and join their ranks right now. Go to Supreme Coup, C-O-U-P, supremecoup.com. That's supremecoup.com/Steve. supremecoup.com/Steve, and learn more about how you can help to stop the left's takeover of the courts, which they've already taken over. But now even the Ninth Circuit gets a little sane every now and then. There can be no sanity at all. None. All right, so that's why you want to go to supremecoup.com/Steve. That's supremecoup.com/Steve. Final thing about this, Daniel, what I kind of hear you saying is the secularists are acting as if they have religious zealotry, and the religionists are behaving as if they are more secularly minded. That's kind of what I hear you saying. You're describing when, you know, when the church has gone too far with inquisitions and things of that nature, has taken its zeal too far. Okay, that's what you're describing is happening on the left right now. That they have a religious zeal, that they have a true conviction they cannot contain, and we're the ones that kind of lack really any convictions other than we just have to keep winning elections. Why? Well, we have to win. Why? Because if we can't lose. But what are we going to do if we win? We just have to keep winning. Right? That's kind of what I hear you saying.
That's politics in one sitting, Steve. I mean, that's the most important observation. Everything else, the minutia, the details flow from there. When I got into this, I always thought, hey, you know, this is the seculars versus the religious people. I'll join the religious people. And then I gradually realized, wait a minute, no, it's the left that is super religious. I mean, they will die for their cause. They'll sacrifice for their cause. We saw it with the vaccines. We saw it with that guy saying, you know, he'd rather his son be killed by a white person. They believe. Man, do they believe. Our side is extremely diffident, equivocating, secular, let's share power. And by the way, this is why we're seeing when the left takes over an area, even if it's a tenuous kind of 50-50 populace, it's like it's balls to the wall.
That's what Walz did in Minnesota. He turned it into California in one legislative session with a 1-seat majority, right?
What we're finding with all these
seats.
places with the illegal aliens being dumped in these small towns. So this place in Alabama is a Trump plus 27 county. Clark County, where Springfield, Ohio is a Trump plus 23 county. And the more you peel back the layers, it's like you have these city council members, county council members. They're more bothered by the people's reaction to the invasion than the invasion of a small town itself. It's shocking what we've allowed to go on. It's shocking how Republicans, they share power. They have these nonpartisan offices. They allow Democrat judges to now nullify everything they do in red states, whereas in the blue states, you don't have that. We cannot go on like this. If the other side is willing to kill and take away liberty for their cause, we have to at least be willing to floor the gas pedal and utilize all of our political agency to protect our rights where we still can.
Amen. Very well said. Thank you, brother. Good to see you. Appreciate it.
Take care. God bless.
You bet. Todd and Aaron, your thoughts on the conversation we just had with Daniel?
Nailed it.
About 90 seconds.
It ain't just the normies. The modern day conservative Christian has way more to do with Joel Osteen than Sam Adams. And it's just not even close.
Yeah, just totally and completely devoid of chests. I'm at the same place that Todd has talked about it, struggling for new ways to say the same thing. But we're going to have answers this election. We're going to have answers. Just from this is my own posture of saying 2022 happened, the midterms happened. I don't think we're going to like these answers, but I'm holding out hope. Don't black pill. I'm holding out hope that I'm going to be pleasantly surprised. But in this environment, going back to the overtime, and I know what happens on the overtime is supposed to stay on the overtime, but you had two keys, Steve, to this election that are really important. And we all agreed they are important. They are probably going to determine, in large part, how this election is going to shake out. But we're talking about communists here. There shouldn't be two keys that are important to winning an election against avowed communists. It should be moot, and that's just a piss poor commentary on the state of the American people.
Amen. It is. All right, we are going to stick around here for the overtime. And, Aaron, how many buy-seller hold submissions do you have?
I've got like almost between 15 to 20 left.
Yeah, I thought you'd probably still have most of them given the time we spent on that one from Patrick only. So good job out of Patrick. But we're going to get to that in as many of those, and we'll close it out in the overtime today. If you're not yet a Blaze TV subscriber and you want to be one, now's a great time. 40% off, $40 off with the code DACE at blazetv.com/DACE. Promo code DACE40. Promo code DACE40 to get 40% off. For everybody else, we'll see you tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck. Until then, Romans 8:28.